In war, there are always laws broken and atrocities committed. This is simply the nature of human conflict. But the vast majority of war crimes in history have been committed by soldiers against civilians. In this video though, we will look at a villainous offense that was actually committed by civilians against an American pilot who was well on his way to becoming a top ace for the Stars and Stripes. In World War II, pilots often had long days and very early mornings. Because of this, they had to do anything they could to preserve energy and get good rest and stay healthy. Today, many people, including myself, face similar challenges with work in their busy lives. But one thing that I've recently added to my routine that has helped me greatly is the sponsor of this video, Mud Water. Mud Water is an awesome coffee alternative that is far better for energy and focus and doesn't ever leave you with a crash or anxiety. Made from organic plant-based ingredients, Mud Water is as versatile as coffee and can be made in a variety of ways using their frother, creamer, and sweetener that they include. Personally, I have always been a big fan of iced coffee, so when I make Mud Water, I follow one of their cold serve recipes and it's great. Plus, it saves me time in my morning and doesn't have the high sugar like my normal coffee that I used to get and only 1/7 of the caffeine. So if you are looking for a better morning routine that will keep you focused and energized without the crash or high caffeine of coffee, then check out Mud Water. Support TJ3 and use the link in the description below and grab some today. Without further ado, enjoy. Fletcher Eugene Adams was a native of Louisiana and was one of the younger airmen in the Second World War, being just 18 when the war broke out. He would join the Army Air Corps and would make the cut for becoming a fighter pilot and was later assigned to the 357th Fighter Group and the new P-51 Mustang. This formidable aircraft would be an ideal fit for him and would serve him well as he joined the air battle over Europe. He quickly made a name for himself and proved that he was a skilled fighter pilot. In his aircraft, nicknamed Southern Belle, he tore into German fighters in early 1944. In just a few short months, he took down a total of 9 enemy aircraft as the Allies attempted to pave the way for the upcoming invasions at Normandy. These kills included a handful of Messerschmitt Bf-109s, one Focke-Wulf 190, and one particular mission where he would actually claim 3 Bf-110 twin-engine fighters in a single day. With all of this accomplishment, he had received multiple awards and recognition. He had well surpassed the mark of becoming an ace and was battling to become the top-scoring pilot in the 8th Air Force. For comparison, and to see his true potential at this time, George Preddy Jr., the highest-scoring P-51 ace of World War II, had 26 kills at the time of his death in December of 1944. One can easily see that Fletcher was on pace to compete with the top aces like Preddy, given that he already had 9 kills in May of that same year. Unfortunately, however, this is where the good fortunes would come to an end for Fletcher Adams. On May 30th of 1944, 7 days before D-Day, he and Southern Belle would take off on a bomber escort mission over Bernburg, Germany. In this sortie, according to combat reports, he and his flight were ambushed by 4 German Bf-109 fighters that pounced on them from out of the sun. Gilbert O'Brien, one of Adams' fellow Mustang pilots in this mission, detailed what happened next in his post-mission statement. I last saw Captain Fletcher Adams at approximately 1230 hours on the 30th of May of 1944 in the vicinity of Celle, Germany, trying to overtake our bombers when 4 Bf-109s came down from us behind and out of the sun. They were at about 7 o'clock. Before I knew what was happening, tracers were going over my wing and into my plane. As I broke, I looked up and got a flashing picture of a Bf-109 firing from close range at Captain Adams. I saw him streaming coolant or coolant smoke. Shortly after this, Captain Adams' aircraft rolled on its back and split est. His ship was in a controlled roll and apparently he himself had not been hit. This was the last time that any American ever saw Fletcher Adams alive. Unfortunately, his fate would be unknown, and the outcome of Captain Adams would remain a mystery for quite some time. 2 years later, though, in 1946, After the Germans had surrendered, his name and fate would come back into focus at a government military court in Dachau, Germany. Here, it finally became public what actually happened to this promising American fighter pilot. When Fletcher Adams was ambushed by the Messerschmitt fighters on May 30th of 1944, he apparently took heavy damage. He was unharmed himself, however, and was able to bail out of his P-51 Mustang. He would come to rest on the ground near a small town called Titische, Germany. When he landed, he was taken into custody by 3 German soldiers and went willingly, like most downed airmen. This would be considered a standard surrender by the rules of war. But during this time, tensions were high among the German people. The Americans, in order to end the war and save the lives of their soldiers, had moved the bombing campaigns into the heart of the Rhineland, and the civilians were now beginning to feel the consequences of war. Because of this, some passionate Germans had begun to hate American airmen passionately, and there had even been some orders given to execute downed flyers. In most places, however, especially rural areas, these orders were rarely followed, as most Germans in modest towns were not so sternly hateful towards the Allies and had not felt the sting of bombing campaigns at home. But unfortunately for Fletcher Adams, he had happened to land at one small German village that did in fact have an overly zealous leader of their local nationalist militia harshly in support of the Nazi war effort. In what can only be perceived as the dark hand of fate, 3 of these local militiamen approached the German soldiers and took custody of the American airmen, likely claiming that he had landed on their land and that they could handle arresting him and detaining him. Shortly after being given to these civilians, however, he was taken into some nearby woods. Witnesses from the village told that they heard multiple gunshots and then saw the men standing over the body of an American pilot. Military officials were able to locate the body of this airman despite obvious attempts by these militiamen to keep it hidden. It was confirmed to be that of Fletcher Adams, and he was found to have multiple gunshot wounds. Because of these testimonies from the villagers that witnessed the event, the men who shot Fletcher Adams on this day would be found guilty of killing an unarmed and surrendered POW in the custody of the German Reich. Gustav Heidemann, one of the 2 men who fired and killed Adams, was sentenced to death by hanging following the trial for his part in the murder. His sentence was later commuted to life in prison and then reduced to 20 years. He would be paroled and released from prison in 1954. Erich Schnell, the other nationalist who aided the 2 but did not actually shoot Adams, served 4 years in prison. The man named Funk, however, the primary suspect in the murder of Fletcher Adams, who fired the first shot and led the trio, was not present before the court to answer for his crimes on this date. The reason that he was not present remains unclear, but one can hope that fate treated him justly for his part in this crime. Fletcher Adams would go down as a hero in the 8th Air Force and would be the first American to be killed by civilians on the ground in World War II. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, and the Purple Heart. At just the age of 22 when he was killed, he left behind a wife back home and a son that he would never see. If you would like your name here at the end of all of my videos and access to awesome bonus content, then please use the link in the description and check out my Patreon to support my hard work. Thanks for watching, please click subscribe, and I'll see you next time.